WWII was born in Indiana, educated in Illinois, and worked in Texas, Kazakhstan, and Virginia, and all points in between. Rod holds degrees in geology from both Eastern Illinois University, the Panthers, and Southern Illinois University, the Salukis, where a lot of my money went for my child, and the ultimate history degree. He was subsequently employed by Chevron Corporation as an exploration and production geologist. Though now retired, Ron was most recently an education supervisor at the American Civil War Museum. Tough gig. He currently sits on its boards of directors. He and his wife Jane reside in Appomattox, not Appomattox, Appomattox, Virginia. And as a personal aside, when we met each other, I was this tall and this big around, and he was the height he is now and had all this hair and a Fu Manchu mustache, and I thought to myself, wow, look at that. So, he and I have a very big love of history, and I find it very interesting that when we see each other, it's almost always, what are you reading? No, what are you reading? What are you doing right now? What's going on right now? Okay, what are you doing? What do you got to do? And then what does he do? He goes out and writes a book. And I got this book, and I got it, and within 2 days, I had it read cover to cover, and probably sent him about 400 questions, and he answered them all. And he's going to answer some more tonight for you. So, Ron, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Great voice. Have you ever thought of going into radio?
Certainly not TV.
Wow. I'm glad you have a big family. Yeah. But no, really, thanks for coming here, because you can be doing all sorts of other things here in Gibson City instead of being here with me. So, no, I really do appreciate it. So usually when my book talks, I dedicate it, usually to the 10 men who flew Worrybird. But considering we're about to celebrate our 250th birthday of this great nation, I thought, let me dedicate this to the 42 million men and women who have served this country since 1775 during times of conflict. 1.3 million of those paid the ultimate sacrifice. Okay. Their last full measure, as President Lincoln so eloquently put it. So the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to basically a little bit of how I wrote the book, but mostly what's in the book. What did these guys go through? What did they experience? And then why I wrote the book. On the right was my working title. That painting, you might kind of tell, it's a reflection of this photograph. I inverted this photograph, actually, just for artistic reasons. But Stanley painted that for the Army in 1950, representing, actually, that's the May 31st, 1944 raid on Pulaski that Worrybird was on, actually. And Pulaski, damn, how I hate that place. My dad wrote that 6 times in 6 different occasions in his diary. So, but I thought I could possibly sell more books with this, you know. All right. The book's based on 3 diaries, mostly. My dad's, First Lieutenant William Stanley, the bombardier. His diary is the most introspective, I should say. Bob Simmons, the navigator. His was most pragmatic, matter of fact type. Third one by Captain. He became a captain toward the end of the war, but he was also a first lieutenant. Norman Blumgren. You'll hear me referred as Pop, because he is the oldest person on the plane at 26. My dad is actually the youngest officer at 20, and the youngest person in the plane is a gunner who's 19. The co-pilot, Harry Burston, he did not write a diary. The Army really discouraged anybody writing a diary, because then there's always the case you'd bring it on board with you. And if you were caught with that, you're court-martialed. I mean, pretty much just instantly, because of the security risk of what you've written. If you're shot down, it could very well be recovered. So he did not write one. Another thing that I really relied upon were the interrogation reports. After each mission, all 10 men sat down by the S2s, the intelligence officers, go through what just happened, fill out all these standardized forms. This is one deficiencies and suggestions report. The last question on one of these interrogation reports is pretty much other. You know, what other suggestions do you make? Now, let me tell you, there is some unfiltered emotions that come right through on those forms. I mean, just curse-laced expletives all over about such and such officer or general, which really impressed me, because the Army didn't go after these guys, even though they said the commanding officer is an a-hole because of what he did or whatever. So that suggestion report, whatever was written, was typed up and sent to the 15th Air Force headquarters, which is pretty impressive. And that's one from a Pulaski raid. So while I was writing this, I always kept this quote. I think it's my favorite quote from President Grant in his memoirs, which is the best Civil War book ever written, about fiction coming up in war recollections and such. He wrote that concerning the myth that General Lee took off his sword and offered it to Grant, and he declined. It absolutely did not happen. And the next time you're in Appomattox, I'll show you that sword, because it's in our museum. So I wanted the book, though it's a novel, it's a historical novel, and the historical part, I wanted it to be as true as possible. So the goal of the book really was to memorialize not only the 10 men of the Worrybird, but also the ground crew and the staff officers, all about 3,000 men that are supporting the 620 that are actually up in the air, right? Because they're kind of forgotten. Right. The narration that I put into it, that's basically based on what I read in the diaries, what sort of emotions, the fear, the pain, the anxiety that I read in the diary concerning that particular moment, I put into the narration. Right. Now, probably most of you have read this book, so you know that there's 10 men on Worrybird, but the narration also through the 11th crew member, which is Worrybird herself. So that's a little different. Well, that's a really different. Worrybird has consciousness. Not to the degree that she's talking to the crew. I mean, I'm not that crazy. But she does talk to, obviously, the other planes in the group and such. Because I wanted more of a bird's eye view of a mission, you know, other than just a single person in the plane, their narrative. So that's one of the main reasons why I brought her to life. So this is an example of the evolution of, this is one page of my dad's diary from July 9th. He had 4 pages written for that day. Again, Pulaski mission. Then I'm adding in, this is a small section of the interrogation report having to do with enemy aircraft. Goes on this mission, my dad's in the front turret with those guns, and 10 Messerschmitts come at him. Okay, so that plus I have the 30 other interrogation reports from the 30 other planes who are on that mission. I also have Pop's diary, Bob's diary. And then what's great about, I mean, she's eventually going to go into the 449th group. And there's a 449th association, still very active. We're going to a reunion in October in New Orleans with them. That association has written 6 books, pretty much in the 90s and the early 2000s, from the original veterans. So that all their stories, and so there'd be, on this mission, there'd be a couple stories on that. So I also gathered facts and such from those books. Newspaper.com, I'll show you an example. That and Ancestry really gave me some personal data on individuals. You know, obviously exactly how old they are, but what sort of job they had right before they enlisted or got drafted. So yeah, personnel data. The photograph in the background there, that is a reconnaissance photo of after this mission. What's kind of cool, yeah, you can't see, Palesty's underneath here. And you can see the terrible bombing accuracy that they had, because they were plowing up a lot of farmers' field here. But what's cool, in the 2000 Google Earth views, these right here, you can still see them, the exact same ones. Matter of fact, in Kazakhstan, I worked with a petroleum engineer who grew up at Palesty in the 60s. His dad was an engineer for Shell, for their refinery there. And he remembers hot summer days swimming in water-filled bomb craters. So that's kind of interesting. So like most stories, they begin at birth. I was going to ask a question, but you guys are going to give me the wrong answer. Because I've talked with enough World War II people that know something about World War II, and if you ask them, just name me real quick. What comes to your mind when I say, name me a World War II bomber?
What? Unfortunately, the 17.
Yeah, it's almost always the B-17. A few will be the B-29, okay? But never, ever what Worrybird was, the B-24. She is just forgotten in history. And part of that is, well, one thing, they say the B-17 had an 11th crew member, and that was a public relations officer. So when the war breaks up, B-17 is an old plane. It was designed in 1934, so they had a lot of B-17s. Okay, the B-24 not till 1940. Right. So 8th Air Force in England, B-17s at the B-17s. England, you got London, you got a lot of press there. You know, it doesn't hurt that people like Clark Gable is a waist gunner. You know, he's a publicity hound. They're following him. Okay. Then after the war, probably the best World War II aviation movie, 12 O'Clock High with Gregory Peck. It's just one of the best World War II movies, especially the emotions. B-17. And then just a couple years ago, Spielberg's series, Masters of the Air, B-17s. 1990 movie, Memphis Belle, B-17. So let me ask, why is Memphis Belle famous?
But they painted on her.
Oh, well, that's what always makes those planes famous.
Got through 45 missions.
First plane to make 25 missions. That's what Hollywood wants you to believe. That's what the Army Air Corps or Press Corps wanted you to believe. But no, it was a B-24, hot stuff. 2 months prior, bombing North Africa and southernmost Italy. So that crew is sent to London because they have to pick up somebody and then head back to the States, begin a big bomb or Bond tour and to show off the plane, time to shine. The press corps would have had a rough time with that because hot stuff, she was hot stuff. She left absolutely nothing to the imagination. That blonde had nothing on, straddling a 500-pound bomb, going earthward, you know. So they pick up this special, this person in London because he has to get back to the United States. And it's Lieutenant General Frank Andrews. He's going back to the States, get his 4th star, and he's going to meet President Roosevelt, who's going to make him the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe. They don't make it, neither of them. Heading into Iceland to refuel, snow and ice, they slam right into a mountain. So 2 World War II icons are kind of swept underneath the proverbial historical rug, really. No one remembers B-24. General Andrews, you're reminded of, though you might not know it, because every time Air Force One takes off, it takes off from Joint Air Base Andrews. Okay, but there's enough silver hair, no hair in the crowd that probably quite a few of us could quite possibly have been born under an Andrews presidency and not an Eisenhower. Eisenhower was the second choice of Roosevelt. So one of those what ifs of history, you know. So Worrybird is a B-24. War breaks out. It's only being made in San Diego. Consolidated Aircraft had designed her. Consolidated is going to need help because they're going to need a lot of these planes. So Douglas Aircraft builds a plant in Tulsa. The biggest plant, Consolidated builds one in Fort Worth. The biggest plant that's going to build almost half of the 18,000 B-24s is Ford, up outside Detroit. Okay, thanks to Edsel Ford. And then North American Aviation builds a plant in Dallas. Okay, North American is most popularly known for designing and building the P-51 Mustang, who is going to be escorting Worrybird. And they also build the AT-6 Texan, which was a training advanced trainer for everybody, right there, right next to where Worrybird was built. So first she's built, she's delivered to the Army Air Force February 3rd of '44. She's got to make her way to Hamilton Air Force Base in San Francisco, but there's going to be a stop first. There you go, in Tulsa. So they're trying to get these planes off the Tucson. Yeah, Tulsa. Thank you. Someone's paying attention. I appreciate that. Yeah, so they're trying to get these planes off the assembly lines as fast as possible. Now, there's always improvements, mainly derived from those after-action suggestion reports. That's the whole reason they put a front turret on here. That was first experimented on in this plant in Tucson. Okay. So they've got all these upgrades. Planes are sent to these modification centers. There's 24 of them in the United States, mostly in the South and Southwest. 7 of them are solely for B-24s. This is one in Tucson. Everyone here in the black and white, those are women there. You can pick that out. Jane and I were there 2 years ago. There it is today. It hadn't changed at all. Yeah. So she eventually makes her way to Hamilton Air Force Base, it's across the bay from San Francisco, to pick up her crew. Okay. So those 10 men on the upper left there, they've been training for 3 months together across the Sierra Mountains in Nevada. There. They come on over in late February to pick up a plane. They're told which plane to get. All right. So those 10 men, they're a good cross-section of America. Cross-section of segregated America. All right. No blacks in the bombing crews. There were Hispanics. So here's my dad here. He's a farm boy turned college student. Pop, he's a middle manager in Montgomery Wards in downtown Chicago. Harry, he's a baker in Kansas City. Bob, he's a civil servant at an airport in Pennsylvania. And then the 6 gunners, you got a couple farmers there, a railroad porter, sawmill operator, you know, just everything from all over the states thrown together. All right. Now, one thing I like to point out is Worrybird, this is just one cog in the machine of war. Okay. Now, obviously, the bird was special to me, to my dad. My dad is obviously special. But really, the story, I say, the plane, the Worrybird, nothing special. Because there's thousands of crews just like this. There's thousands of Worrybirds out there, okay? So that book, you multiply that by the thousands, all right? I asked my dad who came up with the name, and he doesn't know, he couldn't remember. But one of the officers went into town, San Francisco, bought 11 of these Worrybirds, which is a talisman type thing. You know? This is from the 42 Sears Christmas catalog. Okay? Made out of a pine cone. Kiwi bird, that's what the head is. This is my dad's, okay? The pine cone's been worn down because he had that in his flight suit for 50 missions. It's going to break apart. Yeah. Photo there, I think that's in Pensacola, and I'll talk about that. The painting, they hired a out-of-work Walt Disney artist, paid him $25 for that. So I thought that was money well spent. So March 3rd, 44, they're given, Pop is given orders, take Worrybird, fly to West Palm Beach, Florida, Morrison Field. But there's one thing they've got to do first. They think they've earned a badge of honor, okay, picking up their plane. And so before they reach their ultimate destination, unknown at this time, they're going to do something because they can, they have the ability, they have the means, they're young, they have a what the hell attitude because I'm going to war. So they are going to fly underneath. I once asked my dad, weren't they afraid of getting into trouble about flying underneath the bridge? And he just gave that laugh of his and said, what were they going to do? Send us home? Point well taken. All right. So they're here in Hamilton Field. They got to get to Morrison Field there. You'd think 3,000 miles, you're over the states, it's safe. Well, it isn't, because they're going to encounter something that's just as bad as German flak or Messerschmitt cannon shells, and that's weather. Okay. They're going to get over the Gulf there near Pensacola and hit in what's in the newspapers is written as a mini hurricane. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, they do not put oxygen on these planes, not till they get to their final destination. So gigantic cumulonimbus clouds, giant thunderstorm, they got to go through it. They cannot go above 10,000 feet. And they go through this thing, and it's a feather in a tempest. I mean, we're talking wingtip, vertical to the ground type things that a B-24 is not supposed to do. But that's not the bad part. The worst part was the hail. Hitting that hail at 160 miles an hour. And there's numerous canvas surfaces on a B-24. One is shrouded around the front turret. right? Kind of acts as a gasket. That is ripped off. You have 160 mile an hour tornadic gale going right through into the navigator station, okay? But then your rudder and your ailerons are canvas, and they're getting ripped to shreds. So they've got to put down fast. So they, fortunately, Pensacola, the civil airfield, not the naval base, is there. Oops, I'm gonna back up. So this I got from newspaper.com, just searching things, you know, and well, the pilot is nameless, therefore the plane is nameless. The storm and what my dad had told me and the date matches to what happened to Worrybird. So this is probably, though I can't say 100%, about Pop and Worrybird. Two other Air Force planes did not survive, and loss of both crews. Another plane that got caught up in it, they were able to put down, that was in Biloxi, Mississippi, and that had Bob Hope and his contingent inside, who were trying to get to Miami for a USO show. So fortunately, they were able to put down. So they almost become one of these losses of an aircraft. 21,000 Air Force planes are lost in the continental U.S. during the war. 21,000. There were over 50,000 accidents. 21,000 destroyed the planes. But the most amazing thing is almost 15,000 crewmen were killed. Training. Add to that, 909 planes are lost over the Atlantic and the Pacific trying to get to their combat theaters. Many of those are 4-engine bombers with 10-man crews. So you add it up, it's probably going to approach the 17,000 men that were lost in combat, were actually also lost here in the U.S. That was really eye-opening to me. I had no idea just how dangerous the training was. You know, it's untested crewmen, you know, with planes that are really rushed off the production line. Oh, yeah. So yeah. Now, the first death that the Worrybird air crew experiences is not in Europe. It's going to be in Lubbock, Texas. So they stop in Lubbock to fill up, and they have lunch or supper, and they thought, oh, let's go out to the edge of the airfield and watch these guys doing touch and goes. So these are pilots trying to air cadets learning their getting their wings. Stearman biplane, PT-13 or 17, is coming on in just about the touchdown. Another one comes up right next to the Worrybird crew, and it spooks the guy who's just about to land. Now you barely have enough lift to stay airborne when you're just about to land. You're only on one of these things, you're probably going 70 miles an hour. And the last thing you should do is pull up on the stick. Well, that's just reflexive, okay? And he did. And that plane's just going to go and then just dive down, hit, roll over. And that's what happened. The guys run out there. My dad and Bob take care of the air cadet. He's staggering out of the plane, bloody and everything, so they put him down. Pop and Harry go take care of the flight officer. He's right here. Well, unfortunately, the rudder or stabilizer fin had crushed down, so it came down, his head hit, and he was killed. He was killed. So they did not stick around because they knew they were going to get stuck in a board of investigation inquiry, but they had orders to get to Florida by a certain date. So they rushed out of there. So this is another one of those what ifs. If they had stayed, they would have been delayed by a day or two. They would have missed that mini hurricane. They wouldn't have been forced down. But if they had done that, had missed that, they would have gotten to their final destination 10 days earlier, because they were stuck in Pensacola getting Worrybird fixed. It took them 10 days. And they would probably have been on the April 4th, 1944 mission, where their squadron is going to lose 70% of their planes. So it's one of those what ifs, you know? Yeah. All right, so they do finally make it to Morrison Field there. They take off, and not until they're above water can they open up their orders to see where they're flying. Isn't that crazy? You know, hopefully they put enough gas in this thing. Yeah. And they are told to take the southern route. There was also a northern route, mainly to get to England, okay, across Newfoundland and all that, to get to Tunis. And so look at these places. You've got to remember, most of these guys on this plane, these farm boys, they have been out of state. Okay, now they're going to Brazil, Marrakesh, Casablanca. I mean, that's the stuff from Hollywood, you know? Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. But they do get to Tunis, and from there, Tunisia here, they open up their orders and told exactly where to go, and it's going to be Grottaglie, Italy. And there's only one reason why they're told to go there, and that's for them to drop 4 tons of ordnance on Hitler's war machine. That's what this is all about. Get that plane over a target and destroy it. So Grottaglie, yeah, part of the 15th Air Force. 15th Air Force is based in 27 different air bases. These had been previously German, Italian air bases. At the time, Germans held from here on up. So they're right up there against the line. Here's an aerial view of the base. It's the 449th Bomb Group. Bomb Group made of 64 planes, 4 squadrons of 16 planes. The 716th, 17th, 718th, 719th Squadron Worrybird goes into. That's right here. The guys sleep in tents here in these olive groves. There's Grottaglie, a couple miles away. Most prominent structure on here are these dirigible structures here, hangars. And it was built for the Roma, which was Italy's pride and joy airship built in the 20s. Okay, huge, 400 feet long, 92 feet tall. Okay, big. The U.S. Air Corps bought it in the late 20s. And then it meets its demise in an air crash, killing 34 people on board in Norfolk, Virginia. I gave a talk in Norfolk, and nobody in the crowd even knew this had happened, and they'd never seen this sign before. So that was kind of interesting. Yeah. So Grottaglie living. All right. So like I said, they're in olive groves. These poor quality shots were shot by my dad, and Harry had a 35 millimeter camera. You can see the scraggly olive groves. They're still there today. Pyramidal tents. Just think of MASH. That's really. I mean, Korea. They were using leftover World War II pyramidal tents. Yeah, So kind of rough living, especially compared to those in England in the 8th Air Force, who's in nice wooden or stone barracks and such. No, not here. You're lucky if you have a wooden floor. They did have one. The floor is made from wood from the bomb crates. Okay. You're kept warm by a stove that you've made out of leftover parts from the crashed German and Italian airplanes around the edges of the field. Okay. Fueled by 100-octane aviation fuel. But you are safe because you have your fuel hanging outside on the olive tree. You know, only 2 tents burnt down while my dad was there. So, yeah. First shower my dad took was in 6 weeks. Okay, there were no shower facilities except for taking whore baths in the flak. I said that again, didn't I? Yeah, flak helmets. Yeah, right. Shaving out of those too, you know. Bathroom facilities was a slit trench. Now, obviously, you put that downwind. Trouble was, where that was, I don't know if you, on the previous picture, overhead shot of Grottaglie, you saw one row going from the air base to Grottaglie. It was right there up against the road. So you're sitting up there on these steel drums that have a perfectly cut size coal cut perched up there doing your duty, just waving at the Italians going by on the road. It's just, wow. It's just, yeah. On the right there's, yeah, you learn to love life when you can. Okay, there's my dad with a cigar and some Seagrams, and I think there's an empty Coke bottle there, so they're cutting it. That's probably during one of their egg fries with the enlisted crew. I mean, they really were a tight bunch. Okay, you know, they talk about no fraternization, you know, between non-com, but not here. Yeah. And sometimes the officers would go to the enlisted men's tents, and they'd have their egg fries and poker and Seagrams. When they went through Trinidad on their way over, they picked up 2 cases of Seagrams and Scotch. So forever after, my dad was always a Seagrams and Scotch man, and I know where he learned it. Well. So this is actually a photo of the 719th planes in late February. So Worrybird's not here. It's going to take another month. So their tents, you can see some of the olive groves here, but actually where they are is right over there. I mentioned that April 4th, 44 mission that they missed. They get there April 3rd. And they stay in that tent I just showed you. That was the previous crew's tent that they bunked with that night. And let's just say 7 of these planes will not be here in the afternoon of April 4th, including the guys they shared the tent with, so they got their tent. So, yeah, tough. It's tough. So you notice there, well, one thing I do want to say, the runway, the hard stands, it's all packed caliche stone. Everything else is grass and mud. Okay, and you got to remember these crews. These planes are coming back beat up, and they are fixing them up, replacing engines out here in the elements. Okay, really a tough assignment. Tough. So yeah, the planes are olive gray or olive green. Underneath, it's hard to see. It's actually a bluish gray. Okay, so from underneath, the German would look up and it would supposedly be camouflaged against the sky. And if they're above these planes, they'd look down, the green planes would be camouflaged with the green below. Well, that's just a total bunch of BS. And let my dad explain that.
Our Worrybird was all drag, you know, camouflage. Suppose so we could slip in somewhere, I guess. No, I described 1,000 plane raid. I mean, here are 1,000 airplanes taking off, and then there's a constant stream going across Europe. They're not fooling anybody. They're going to hit a target somewhere. Just follow them. So the camouflage made no sense. And somebody said, well, let's don't paint them then. So they didn't paint them, just polished aluminum. And the planes would fly 5 miles an hour faster. Our first mission, we'd go up, all the planes were camouflaged, olive drab. And I don't know, half a dozen missions or so. I was standing behind Pop, and I looked out the window there, and the lower group of 4 planes down there, there was a silver airplane. 1 out of 32 was a silver airplane. And he looked shiny, and the sun was shining and brightly. And I said, boy, I'd hate to be flying in that plane, because they'll zero right, fighters will just zero right in on him. They gotta have an aiming point. So yeah, I'd sure hate to be in that airplane. One of my last missions, when I was standing behind Pop again, I looked down there, and we were the only olive drab plane in the formation. And I said, let's get the hell out of here. They're shooting at us.
Good to hear him laugh. Yeah. So the fact that every time you see a silver plane appear in the formation, that means an olive drab one is gone. So it just showed as a visual representation the rapid attrition of these planes. And that's the silver plane my dad saw. Silver Babe, that's the first one that came into the group. Lost over Austria in December. Oh, yeah. So what did they bomb? These are stats from the entire 15th Air Force. For Worrybird, when I tallied it up, actually about a third were refineries. A little more up there and a little less of these guys. But marshaling yards, the railroad yards, stopped the transportation of goods. Okay. Yeah, that's exact. Right before the bombs dropped, then when they dropped. Petroleum refineries, that's Palesti, right there. Aircraft factories, that's a Messerschmitt plant right outside Vienna. Bridges, this is the Var River Bridge. This is Nice, France, so there's the French Riviera right there. Yeah. Troop support. That was a tough one for my dad, emotionally. Dropping frag bombs were basically 20-pound grenades, just for fragmentation. Just knowing that it's kind of strange, He knew dropping bombs on all these other sites, people are going to be killed, okay? Including civilian workers and in some cases enslaved workers. But then it bothered him that he was dropping them on the ground German troops, these guys that were drafted into the army. That did bother him, For those of you who do know your World War II history, that unfortunately is the Abbey at Monte Cassino. Yeah. Or what's left of it. Yeah, they did. But yeah. Now, thanks to my sister-in-law, Amy, my second edition of my book, I put in a map. Yeah. It does. So, I always saw a list of my dad's missions, Worrybird's missions, and it's one thing just to see a list of town names, and what country. Oh, okay. But then when you put them on a map and you see the wide geographical distances were they flew. It just kind of blew my mind. And the other thing is, this is Allied held territory. Southern end of Italy and Corsica and Sardinia. That's it. So you're pretty much over enemy territory the whole time. And that is something I forgot when I was comparing the B-24s, B-17s. B-24 could fly further, fly faster, and carry more bombs. But you had to pay for that. One of those is the B-17 could fly 7,000 feet higher. So you're out of range of the smaller caliber flak guns. Okay. And the other thing, what made the B-24 more efficient was what's called the Davis wing. Davis was the engineer at Consolidated, a very efficient wing. But because of that, and there's the shape of the B-24, to quote Pop and any other B-24 pilot, the B-24 was a bitch to fly. Okay. Throughout for about the first month in the diaries, all three diaries, we all three helped Pop out of the plane. We carried Pop to the truck or to the Jeep because his legs were all cramped up from the rudder pedals on the B-24. Now you can dial in your tabs and nice level flight and everything, but you're over enemy territory. You got to stay close, tight, and you can't do any of that. It's all manual control. You're always fighting it, staying wingtip to wingtip, and that's just a lot of rudder control. So yeah. So, but eventually his thighs were like this, you know, and it didn't bother him. Yeah. So the Germans aren't exactly sitting by and letting them fly over, you know, bomb them. So they've got their flak guns, their Fluggewehrkanone. They're 88s, they're 105s, they're 128s. Big guns, shooting 10 to 12 a minute. Okay. And then they have their Luftwaffe, their Messerschmitts, and their Focke-Wulfs. So this is a story of two planes in the 449th, Pistol Packin' Mama and the Heavenly Baby. Pistol Packin' Mama is, besides a cool song, you know, and great nose art, she made it into the comics. Right. So over Regensburg, Germany, she loses an engine. She can't keep up the same speed as the rest of the formation, so she starts trailing behind. All right. Tail end Charlie. You do not want to become tail end Charlie. For this mission, the 449th takes off, and I don't know what, a couple other groups are coming. They're over Italy trying to form up, and it was chaos. Groups were coming like this, so they scattered. So the 449th, only 15 planes make it back together, and Colonel Gent, who's in charge, says, nope, we're going to our target. It's only 15 planes. And the fighter, our fighter plane cover never rendezvoused with them. So they get to the Messerschmitt plant, and they do bomb it, and then 50 Messerschmitts come at them against 15 planes. All right. So they see Pistol Packin' Mama trailing behind some smoke, and they're going to say, oh, there's easy prey. We're going after him. The crew here and the crew here trained together back in the States in Nebraska. They knew each other well. And they saw their friends trailing behind and 50 Messerschmitts, the Focke-Wulfs, going after them. And they're just like, we got to go back. We got to protect her. That is a court-martialable offense. You do not do that. It's part of the cohesive, you break the cohesive structure of your group and therefore your mass firepower of your machine guns. Okay, so you are taught you do not break ranks. Well, they did to protect them. And all across Europe, from Germany well in, across Austria, well into Yugoslavia, they're fighting off these Germans. And pistol packing Mama, she eventually loses 3 of her engines, and she can't do it. She's heading down. But not before she shoots down 15 German aircraft. And that is a world record. And it still holds today. And it's never going to be surpassed because that sort of warfare just doesn't happen anymore. Right. But they do make it back. They are not court-martialed. They're given a good talking to. Over the June 24th Plesty mission, a 719th plane, our baby, number 2, is shot up and is trailing behind. Worrybird is shot up. Not as bad as our baby, but so Pop and the crew, they do a vote over their intercom. Are we going back to protect our baby? And they said yes. It had to be unanimous. It had to be unanimous, and it was. So they went back and they protected her. And 2 Me-109s just trailed them 1,000 yards out. Okay, all across from Romania across Yugoslavia until they hit the Adriatic Sea. But those guys just sat there 1,000 yards out, which is right out of machine gun range, and just waiting for one of them to fall away, you know. But they probably said, we are not going to do this pistol packing Mama thing, you know. So they did not attack. What's interesting about that story is it is not in any 3 of those diaries, because they knew that is a court-martialable offense. What they did, they didn't want anything written down. It was in a letter from Bob Simmons, the navigator, that I got describing that. But what's also interesting is Pop gets the Distinguished Flying Cross, the DFC, for that. So far from being court-martialed, you know. Does the Army ever make sense? Yeah. Yeah. So I had difficulty in transferring the emotions into print. You know, you never can. Even in a good first account book written from a person in combat, it's still, I mean, you can get teary-eyed, but you know the emotions aren't anywhere near what actually occurred. So this is out of my dad's first combat mission. We lost 1 plane, Rustad, that's the pilot, and crew. What a tragedy. We killed them ourselves. They were hit with one of our own frag bombs. Really a snafu all along. Oh, I can't read it. Maybe I can't read it. The bombs hit between the number 3 and number 4 engine. So that's right here. That's right here. Immediately, this ship was a ball of flame. The left wing fell down by itself. The number 1 and 2 engines still running. No one got out. I went through school with Bowen, the bombardier. Really a swell fella. God wore his hell. That was Nancy Jane, the plane, over Budapest, and it crashed downtown Budapest. Yeah. So my dad had to invoke something from another war, the Civil War. You know, war is hell. That quote to convey what he was feeling. The video I showed you with him describing the camouflage, I don't know if you noticed, but he did one of these. That's because right prior to that, the interviewer had asked him, describe a typical mission. And so he described the Palesti mission. And one of the same things happened on that mission. And my dad's emotions just got the best of him. And yeah, it was tough. They just had to stop. And yeah, so tough. Let's see, June 6th. When I entered the war room, I really knew we were in for it. Palesti was the target. Damn, I hate that place. So anxiety, anguish, terror, it can hit you before breakfast. Okay? You're at the briefing there and you see what it's going to be. You've already been there 4 times and you know what it's going to be. So Palesti, it's the 4th most defended target, or German target in Europe. Number 1 is Berlin. Number 2 and 3 is Vienna and Munich, which they hit them numerous times too. They had 300 flat guns. Palesti has 290. Thing is, like Munich, it's 160 square miles. Palesti is 25. And those 290 guns, almost every single one of them can be aiming at your group of planes. So, tough. Our ship was hit in about 70 places. I don't see how we got through. Yeah, and in Pop's diary, basically says the same thing. We were hit over 70 times. Don't know why the crew was not killed. Maybe it's because I learned to pray. So, you know, you hear there's no atheists in foxholes. Well, there's none at 20,000 feet either. So the closest thing that evokes my dad's emotions is what he wrote the night before his 50th and last mission. And I'll see if I can get through this. Like my dad, I wear my emotions on my sleeve when it has something to do with my family or our country. You know, I tear up every time I sing the national anthem. Can't help it. All right, this will be my 50th. I will certainly be sweating this one. A person can't realize what a strain it is unless they go through it themselves. You're always on edge. You imagine things. Those imaginations lapse over into your dreams. Flak is horrible to experience. In a dream, it's hell. And he will, well after the war, keep having reliving that experience in his dreams. Yeah. Now, not all of his experience was bad. It's mostly 95% boredom and then 5% pure terror. Okay. So they get leave every now and then. Here's the 4 officers, Dad there, in Naples. There's my dad outside my tent with Salvatore, their Italian tent boy, who's smoking his pay there, you know. He was paid in packs of cigarettes. The guys bought them for 5 cents at the PX. He sold them for $1. And $1 is worth a lot of money in Italy at that time. His mom washed their clothes. So the tent again. Here's Dad, Bob, and Pop in the olive groves. Pop in his Sunday's finest. They're cleaning out the tent. Here's Bob just decompressing, taking a sun bath. Late afternoon, they usually missions are usually woken up 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning. Okay, and they're usually at the flight line about 7 or 8 over target, about usually right at noon. You know, getting back 3 o'clock or so. And then you have the rest of the day to enjoy. Yeah. Pop and Dad on a rock, reading mail. All right, let's be honest. You text something to your sister. You wait a few minutes. Why the hell hasn't she texted back? All right. Speaking the truth here, you get upset if someone doesn't text you back pretty much immediately. All right, okay. These guys did not get mail for 2 months, 58 days. And their parents did not get mail from them. Can you imagine? Your boy's in harm's way for 2 months. You have no idea. Zero. All right. April 28th, those 4 guys get 178 pieces of mail. It had been sitting somewhere. Wow, 178 pieces. Yeah.
Jim Worland must not have been the postmaster.
There you go. Yeah. Again, another Seagram's moment there, down there. So they are trying to have fun, trying to forget the other 5% of the time, you know. So what is absolutely amazing is they all survived, not a single scratch. My dad got hit with flak, and I've got that piece of flak in the chest. But he had his flak suit on, and it had gone through the plexiglass, 2-inch plexiglass in the front there, and slowed it down enough that it didn't hurt him. But yeah, no one is hurt. So Worrybird, poor gal, she dies on her birthday, February 4th of 45. But she dies to the hands of the salvagers, right? Unlike 71% of her sisters and brothers. All right, so 71% of the planes that came out of Dallas, North American, there were lost in combat. So tough, 71%. It's incredible, just terrible odds, terrible odds. Today, there's, out of the 18,400 built, there's 13 surviving, only 1 flying, Diamond Lil, based in Dallas. Yeah. My dad, like most of the air crew, okay, these are experienced air crew finishing their missions. And then the Army Air Force is like, all right, what are we going to do with these guys? All right, let's put them in pilot training, because we've got the invasion of Japan coming up. So my dad is sent to Florida. That's where he is here, earning his wings, flying one of those Stearmans. Okay, that's him in 2003. We bought him a ticket to go on up in the Stearman. And yeah, the foolish pilot gave my dad the controls. And Dad put it through its paces. Loops, flips, vertical stalls. Dad said it was like riding a bike. It just all came back. Yeah, so he finishes up actually in Selma. He was flying his invasion designating aircraft, the P-47 Thunderbolt, flew it for 1 hour, soloed for 1 hour, and then they called him back in and say, hey, Stanley, come on back, the war's over. So, yeah. He continued his college education and became a research chemist and a rocket scientist, actually. Yeah. Pop, he stayed in the Air Force and came on out at Lieutenant Colonel. Bob was discharged. He was going to be sent also to become pilot with a bad heart. He did 50 missions with a bad heart. He stayed in the civil service underneath the Air Force for 30 years. Harry went back to Kansas City and he owned 5 grocery stores chain there. And then the other guys, the 6 guys, just melded back into society. I've heard from 2 of their sons one just a couple weeks ago. So that was great to hear. So that actually, getting a little off subject, but got an email after my book was published from a Mike Yates. And he just said, you know, my dad didn't say anything about his experiences. All I knew was he was some sort of gunner on some sort of plane somewhere in Italy. That was it. So he saw my book for sale. I said, oh, maybe I'll learn kind of what my dad went through. All right. So imagine this. He's reading through there, and about 40 pages in there, Worrybird's meeting the crew. Ba, 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 ba. Cecil Yates from Sulphur Springs, Texas. It's his dad. Could you imagine that?
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
And what a cool letter he sent me. I mean, it just made my day, week, month, and just, because he said, I got to know my dad better. So, wow. So that's just great. But yeah, most of them just melded back in like there's roughly 16 million World War II vets, and maybe about 2 million of so joined the VFW or the Legion, but the vast majority just wanted to put it behind them and continue on. Father many sons and daughters. Fathered us, you know, lots of us. These guys were special. What they went through. And even if you weren't in the war, just going through the Depression. But then to go through something like this, to be 19 or 20. My dad did his 50th and final mission 2 days after his 21st birthday. So I think about that. What was I doing when I was 20 years old? Unfortunately, there's a couple people in here who know what I was doing when I was 20 years old.
Too many of us know that.
Yeah. And
I was sponging off my parents for 6 more years.
But really, I think about that and I feel embarrassed. Because these guys, they just matured so quickly and beyond their years right then. And between that and the GI Bill, let me tell you, that built the United States of America as we know it today. Yeah. So that's kind of summed up by Oliver Wendell Holmes when he said, through our great good fortune in our youth, our hearts were touched with fire. In Holmes's case, that was the Civil War. It was given to us to learn at the outset that life is a profound and passionate thing. Because, you know, that gives you that sense of, well, what you're going through right now, but then you got to remember, hell, I bombed Palestine 7 times and I went through that. This is nothing. Okay, so most things in life are relative. Yeah. So why did I write this book? The easy answer is because my dad was always saying, those diaries would make a great book. I can just see him saying that. And he always wanted to do that, but he never did. You know, never did. So I made a promise to myself that I'm going to do what my dad wanted to do, but never did. But that still doesn't answer the root cause. You know, why? And that's the root reason is to remember, lest we forget. You know, stop it. Make sure the deeds, the sacrifices that men like my dad and thousands of others did, so that, you know, the freedom that we enjoy, that we just take for granted all the time, to know that that was paid forward for 80 years ago by these young men in their flying machines. So, let my dad, though, say it best.
Mr. Stanley, thank you very much, and we appreciate you coming here and doing this with us, and we're want to thank you for your service.
Well, you know, MacArthur said, old soldiers never die, they just fade away. So, you know, I'm fading away, we're all fading away, but you guys are recording it before we all fade away.
So thank you from myself and from those 10 guys. A question, yes.
When and where was he, and the reason why he was interviewed?
Yeah.
When did all that take place?
That was 2008, a Smithsonian Veterans History Program. So they, project, right. They'd kind of done the same thing, believe it or not, with Civil War veterans. Well, obviously, in print, okay. Then the same thing with slave narratives, did that. I'm not sure they ever did it with World War I. I've never seen that. They may have. But then in 2008, they decided to, okay, we're going to go out and try to interview as many World War II veterans. And that was done in Aiken, South Carolina, and some from newspaper from Augusta, Georgia came out. My dad and interviewed them, and so all those interviews are in the Library of Congress. You can search, and yeah, pretty impressive. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I have a copy.
Yeah, you can get on there in the book. In my book, I've got UPC code. Scan it, and it'll take you right to. It's about an hour, actually a little over an hour interview. Yeah. Yes.
I have several. I'll try to minimize it. This is surprising. Explain to people the crushed officer cap.
Yeah, the cap.
Oh, that's the.
Yeah. 50 mission crush hat. That's what they called it. For the 8th Air Force, I suppose it's 25 mission crush hat, because they only needed, well, eventually it went to 35 missions, but 15th Air Force had to do 50 missions. So these things are pretty stiff, all right? It's a hard cardboard strip up in there. Well, or ring, yeah. You can't fit your earphone headsets over that. So they'd take that out, right? So that I got a photo of Pop. I think Harry took it from the co-pilot. So he got a side shot of him, and you can see his hat just crushed down by his headphones because he took that out. So it's crush hat. And you could also fold it up easy and put it in your pocket too. You know.
Partially a spring decor. They were doing it kind of for fun.
And also
the regular army, because they're like, we are airmen, we're better than you.
Yeah.
So we did that.
Yeah.
Another question for you.
Yeah.
How old were you when you realized, and I know he would never, ever have referred to himself as this, because when you watch like Band of Brothers, they talk to Dick Winters, and he says, "Grandpa, are you a hero?" And he says, "No, but I served in the company of them." How old were you when you realized you were living with one?
Yeah. You know, that was a slow progression. I guess as one matures, you finally realize really what early on, oh, he flew an airplane, cool, oh, he's in the war, then you start seeing war movies and such, and then you start reading, especially diaries. That was my favorite thing to read from any of the wars, the combatants' diaries, and you realize, ooh, what these guys went through. And then one of those guys was my dad. It took a while, because my dad, I'd say my dad was average as far as how much the war he told us. As a young kid, I knew he was in a plane called the Worrybird. I had a sailboat I named the Worrybird when I was 9 years old. Later on, as I matured into high school and such, he'd tell you a little bit more. And a little bit more. I don't know if he knew that, well, he can take this now, to know what it was really like. I don't know. But not a whole lot more until you know, the late 1990s, and then he really opened up. You
Do
know.
you think it was the hardest, besides on him, your mom? When it was,
That's-
they were both older and it was all really coming back to them?
Yeah, part of, you know, that also gets, when I told you, well, when he says that it is hell in your dreams. So that gets into my dad's, I guess you could say, PTSD. He never admitted it. He's just one of those proud Kansas Methodists. But he did, because he would have night terrors. And as kids, occasionally we were woken up by screaming. But fortunately, he had a wife of 74 years next to him to help. You know. So he didn't. So he told us some. So then there's other people, like Cecil Yates. He never told anything to his son. Absolutely zero. Then there's others who joined the Legion or such for camaraderie and probably spoke more. And then those that actually talked and wrote books and stuff. But you know, but later in life, my dad was opening up more, even to strangers. Yeah, I can say this story. Yeah.
He went to some reunions too.
Yeah, he did go to a reunion. So at the KOA. So this is early 2002, 3, something like that. Mom and Dad came up to visit us. I'm down in the store behind the counter. Dad's on the other side. We're just talking. Rig comes up. Couple mature people come on out. They come on inside, and being in the customer service, you know, you start, you know, just small talk, engage. Oh, where are you traveling from? And where are you from? And so the woman answers me. She goes, oh, Chicago. And I'm like, wow, not with that accent. Had a beautiful Germanic lilt, you know. And so I tell her so, you know. I said, no, you weren't originally from Chicago. You know, I lived there long enough, you know. She goes, no, you're all right. I'm from Munich. Have you been there? I go, no, I have not. She turns around, looks at my dad, says, have you been there, sir? He kind of looks, you know how sometimes some things in your memory you can just remember just, you know. So he kind of looks, gets as far away, kind of look, and says, yes, I did, in my youth, from 20,000 feet. The woman, oh yes, I remember your bombs as a child. So all of a sudden I'm like, all right, I'm opening up the cash drawer, about to give them back their money, you know. And so all of a sudden, wow, look at my dad. He's tearing up. And of all the things he can say is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I bombed you. And she goes, oh, nine, no. You had to do what had to be done. Herr Hitler had to be stopped. All right. So here's a case where you do reveal your memories, and it helps. Because my dad's was in many parades or events and things. He'd wear his 50 Mission Crush hat, you know. Hundreds of people told him, thank you for your service. all that combined did not equal the relief I saw on my dad's face. Because he was forgiven by someone that he could have easily killed, you know? And I like to think it was about right then that his night terrors ceased, or certainly dropped off, you know? So sometimes spoken memory is a real powerful thing.
Wasn't that Jimmy Stewart in England? He was part of this group.
Yes.
He was the pilot.
And actually, yeah, and I said, you know, B-17 got all the press because like Clark Gable. Well, Jimmy Stewart was a B-24 pilot, squadron pilot, chief pilot, head pilot. 25 missions, but he just didn't, the limelight, that wasn't important to him. And just,
They had to pull him from flying. 'cause
They did.
he was-
They did. It got to him.
Yeah, yeah.
As a brigadier general, I believe.
Yes, he did. He did. Had his own P-51 Mustang, private P-51 Mustang too. So. Rick, did you have a question?
Well, I kind of had a two-part question. Number
Yeah.
one is, I can imagine a lot of those missions that they flew, when they came back, they were probably on fumes. And there's
Yeah.
probably some stories about that.
Yes.
Number two, I'd like to know of all the crew members, your dad, did he survive longer than all of them, or are there some still living?
Oh, okay. My dad was the last.
Wow.
Yeah, 2019. Yeah, yeah. The 449th, you know, probably 3,000 men or so. There's 3 left. Yeah, the fumes, a lot, oh yeah, every mission, a lot of planes. I shouldn't say every mission. It's the far ones to France or Germany or even Palestine. That's really reaching the limits of their range. And they would be landing, some of them short in Corsica, if you're like up there in France and such. But as soon as they cross the Adriatic Sea, a lot of them were stopping in Bari or whatever because they did not have enough fuel to get back to Grottaglie.
Behind the lines.
That was most of them. No, they would make it back. As far as fuel, none of them really got lost behind the lines because of lack of fuel. It was for mechanical problems from flak and such. But yeah. So one of the stories with Skipper, Worrybird's PAL plane that was made right in front of her at Dallas on their way over the Atlantic, they ran out. Okay, the pilot told them, we're going to ditch, throw everything overboard that you can. And he said, all right, prepare to ditch. And then the engineer, there's 18 different fuel tanks on those wings and overhead, jiggled a valve or something and got a little gas. And then, there's the runway. And they just touched down and 2 of the engines sputtered out. So they were literally a minute from out of fumes. So it was always close. Yeah. Yeah.
Last thing I wanted to throw out was our Uncle John Worland had a lot of problems with night terrors. From the
Did he?
When he was a naval bombardier and pilot.
Yeah.
And it was really made a lot worse after he had his injury where he fell down the stairs. And he survived that. And his daughter Jane, who of course our first cousin,
Yeah.
would tell us about the stories and would tell your mother-in-law, Rita, our mom, would say, Aunt Rita, he's sitting in his hospital bed fighting World War II. He's flying the plane and he's shooting and he's dropping bombs and he's giving instructions to his 4-man crew. Everything. So he's doing mission. He would sit there mission, one after another when he was awake because of the injury he sustained. And everything.
Something in his...
Yeah, and it just something that plagued him from the time he had his injury for the next, whatever, I don't know, I can't remember, it was what, 4, 5, 6 more, some years like that.
When my dad had a leg amputated because of a tumor in his knee, 2015. So I was down there at the hospital in Augusta, spent the night following the surgery with him. And so I must finally get to sleep, and all of a sudden something's waking me up, and what's going on? Someone's singing. There's my dad in bed singing the Army Air Corps song. Off we go into the wild blue. So yeah, good song.
Yeah.
He sang all the stanzas. I'm like, what? God. So, well, it wasn't night terrors, but it was something to do with the war. It has something with the hospitals and anesthesia, maybe, or something. Yeah.
Rod, were your parents married when your dad went to war?
No. So he came back. Southwestern College, it's a small Methodist college in Kansas. Dad was there as a sophomore when he took off for the Army. And my mom was going there during the war, so my dad came back, and they didn't know each other. Though my dad's sister, my aunt, did date my mom's brother. It's kind of one of those weird things. And my dad visited, because after the war, he wasn't sure what he wanted to do. You know, farming, go back as a farmer or continue or whatever. So he just went back to Southwestern and visited his music teacher. And just said, hey, you know, just to get some advice. Then he walked on out, and the music teacher's secretary now was a cute little pigtailed gal from Halstead, Kansas, named Cloyce Brown. And there's an interesting looking girl. I think I'll go back to college. And that was that.
They dated 6 months and they were married.
Wow.
Yeah. Had to get on.
4 years.
Yeah. Had to get on with life, you know.
My final question, and it's the ironic question. This oil field that your father bombed in post-war, who owned it?
Yeah, that's difficult because, all right, Palesti was a town, small town, but it just happened to be surrounded by 15, 17 oil refineries, owned by different oil companies, European, Romanian, Standard Oil of Indiana.
Who worked for Standard Oil in Indiana, Ron?
So like, side shoot there. So my dad is Kansas State, you know, surviving, 2 kids, wife, surviving on GI Bill, $70 a month, you know. Gets this job. Standard Oil offers him the job as a research chemist. $4,000 and something dollars, you know. And it's just like, wow, we're in the money now. But I asked him, I specifically asked him, Dad, did you ever think about Standard Oil in Palesti? And he goes, yes. I had to do some soul searching. Because here I was not that many years ago bombing the very company I'm going to be working for. And he had to square that, which he did. But yeah, so it was different companies, and I don't know. This Vega, I think today, owned by something Vega. Nah, I don't know, Tom. Yeah, don't know. Yeah. And the reason Palesti was so important, at one point it produced 50% of Germany's refined oil. 50%. So, you know, you take that out, it's going to hurt. So that's why. And that was something that the Germans afterwards, the German High Command, they gave great credit to the Army Air Force. You know, it was one of the main reasons that defeated Germany. But they really blasted our prioritization of targets. They said, you guys really fouled up.
What, the Germans said that about
Yes,
the Americans?
yes. They just said, you know, why do these towns, why do these factories No, day one should have been oil, oil, oil.